Hello, brothers and sisters. It's your boy BC. Welcome back to another Based LDS video. And I'm hoping some of you just watched my video on testimony, and that's going to relate kind of to this next video. And this will be my last video for the night. Congratulations. Hope you're not bored. And I just want to talk a little bit. I'm starting a new series on Come Follow Me. And I'm not going to teach from the app or the books. I'm not going to follow, oh, so-and-so said this, because you've done those things. You've done them with your family. You've done them either preparing to sit in a class as a learner or to teach a class. You've done them for yourself already, hopefully. If you're watching these videos, I'm guessing you're somewhat involved in your own learning. You care about what you're learning and what you're doing. So, as I was looking through the responsible for your own learning, I was minded of a video from Elder M. Russell Ballard that was addressed to CES religious educators. And he gave this in February of 2016. I did hear it like a week or two after he gave it, and I was blown away. And this is a talk I've gone back to once, sometimes twice a year, to remind myself of what it means to be a good student and a good educator. Because teaching the youth is highly important to me. And so I'm hoping that what I have to say here will be helpful to you. I hope it will lead you to some introspection and to becoming better teachers and learners for yourself. So let's get started. This is I'm going to do clips from Elder Ballard and his talk. And I hope you enjoy and that you learn from this, because I definitely learn something every time I listen to it. So here's the first part.
In a general authority training meeting, President Gordon B. Hinckley taught on the subject, keeping the doctrine pure and the church on the right course. He said, quote, "We cannot be too careful. We must watch that we do not get off course. In our efforts to be original and fresh and different, we may teach things which are not entirely in harmony with the basic doctrines of this, the restored church of Jesus Christ. We had better be more alert. We must be watchmen on the tower," close quote. As church education moves forward in the next 21st century, each of you needs to consider any changes you should make in the way you prepare to teach, how you teach, and what you teach, if you are to build unwavering faith in the lives of our precious youth. Gone are the days when a student asked an honest question and a teacher responded, "Don't worry about it." Gone are the days when a student raised a sincere concern and a teacher bore his or her testimony as a response intended to avoid the issue. Gone are the days when students were protected from people who attacked the church.
So there's the first part. Wise counsel from President Hinckley and the things that the church, the brethren, are noticing in the world. We need to lengthen our stride, is the old statement, right? And being better educators. We need to be aware that the youth especially, and in some cases the adults, are seeing things that they've never been confronted with before. You can grow up in the church, and I don't know how, but claim to have heard about polygamy for the first time at the age of 20 or 30 something. And again, I don't know how. But what are you going to do when and you can be like, well, the church is, and you might have something to fall back on to help people. What are you going to do when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, and you're like, dude, your church hated black people and didn't let them have the priesthood. What kind of bigots are you guys? How is a kid going to answer that? What are they going to do? What are they going to say? What are they going to think if they've never heard about blacks being denied the priesthood? If they are not aware of the section, what do you call it? Section 2. No, not section. You know what I'm talking about. Where President Kimball lays out the blacks getting the priesthood. They make that announcement. How is a youth going to handle that? What are they going to think? What's their first source of information? What's their first reaction going to be? A friend at school? Someone or something on the internet? Something a teacher said to them in a classroom? Talking about U.S. history, Mormons crossing, and they didn't let the blacks hold the priesthood. They married 100 women. And what's your reaction going to be as a teacher, parent, grandparent? What is your reaction going to be? Oh, I know the church is true, so just don't worry about it. That does not cut it. At the same time, well, I don't know why the Lord did it, but I'm sure he had his reasons. Is better, but still not good. What are you going to do? We need to be better at being prepared for the questions. And so we have to learn to study better and to know more about the history and the doctrine and the context of both. And context matters. You will hear things about history, and it's true, but they'll take it out of context and put it in a situation that did not apply. The same with doctrine. We need to be ready to handle these things. And we need a testimony for when we come across things we're not sure of. We need a testimony when we're kind of aware, but we don't have the answers. We need a testimony to guide us to help them find answers. So let's come on to the next part here, and he just continues from the same spot.
Fortunately, the Lord provided this timely and timeless counsel to you teachers. And as all have not faith, seek ye diligently and teach one another the words of wisdom. Yea, seek ye out of the best books words of wisdom. Seek learning even by study and also by faith. This is especially applicable today because not all of your students have the faith necessary to face the challenges ahead, and because many of them are already exposed through the internet to corrosive forces of an increasingly secular world that is hostile to faith, family, and gospel standards.
And there it is. That's the rub, right? Your kids, because of the internet, and the internet is on the computer you're watching, it's on the laptop they have, it's on the phone every kid carries around nowadays. And as teachers, you know about these phones. You hate these phones because they have their phones out in class, and they may or may not be participating in class while they're on their phone. Their phone may not be on the church site and on the lesson. They may be scrolling cars, chicks, fashion, who knows? The kids today are getting it from everywhere, and the kids are getting it, the adults are getting it too. Are we set to brace the storm? Are we actively learning? Are we learning by study and also by faith? And what does it mean to study by faith? I think we should be living the best life we can so we can be open to the response, to the reception of the Spirit. We need to be in our scriptures. We need to be praying. Testimony and revelation go a long way. Best books. What does best books mean? I've heard so many arguments on best books. What are you learning about? When it comes to church stuff, I like Nibley. I like Truman Madsen. I like so many of the guys out there. They speak on a higher, more academic level, especially Nibley. I really appreciate Nibley for answering some of the tougher questions. But some of those tough answers may be over the heads of younger learners or those who are not ready for the meat of the gospel per se. And so I think other best books I really like, and probably I come away feeling better spiritually nourished than I do with Nidley. Brother Millett, Robert L. Millett. I adore his books. There are other authors out there like him. I've got them in front of me. Talmage, Jesus the Christ. The guy who wrote... I can see faces. I'm having trouble with names. But there's so many good books out there where they offer testimonies of Christ and explanations on Scripture and history. One of my favorites, though, is Brother Millett. And he's written so many books on a wide number of subjects. But he doesn't just give you the scholarly text. He gives you principle behind the law. He gives you personal experience and how he's reacted in various situations. He tells a story, and when I talk to my father-in-law, I get the same feeling. Brother Millett tells the story, and he's done it in quite a few books. Sometimes his stories will be involved in several different books, the same story. But he talks about taking part as a youth in helping to build the chapel. Because a long time ago, the church would put in part of the money, the members would do the other half, and then they would take part in the building of the chapel to cut down expenses. My father-in-law talks about going door to door seeking financial assistance to pay for carpeting, to pay for pews, to pay for... because the members sacrificed for that building, and then they took greater pride and greater care. And nowadays, funding's up, building approved, built, move in. And we don't appreciate it so much. It's just, well, this is what the church provides. In my mind, that's one of the reasons why we complain about the money the church has. Because we don't think about all the things the church has to do with the money. Yes, they do sit on it. Yes, they do build it up. And yes, they readily admit, this is for the rainy day. There's going to come a day. There's going to come a day when the church will have to rely on that money. I have no problem saying, yeah, bank your billions, because there's going to come a day when the church will use that money for the benefit of all mankind and the building of the kingdom. They already use a great deal of it to an extent, but I am glad that they're wise enough to bank some for future endeavors and future problems. And we're coming up on some of those problems now for those of you all up into the second coming. So I think there are other ways to study by faith. I do like philosophy. I understand its shortcomings, but I do think learning to form arguments and read these things help us to understand the world and the universe. I think science, math, literature, Shakespeare shows us so many great stories about the human condition viewed through 15th century English lens. But he speaks to universal conditions. And then we can take his principles and morals and apply them. I think Jordan Peterson, I think Jonathan Haidt, and Michael Murray, and or Douglas Murray. You get the idea. There's a lot of good books out there that can help us to understand the world and come to terms with what is going on, that will protect us and keep us safe for the future. And we need to be actively involved in seeking out those things. So let's go to the next section. And this is a quote from Harold B. Lee that I think is rather timely. And forgive me, I'm having to refer to some notes here. And because I've got lights off, because my face washes out, I'm having to use my phone as a flashlight to look at the notes. So here we go.
President Harold B. Lee observed, quote, "We would remind you that the acquiring of knowledge by faith is no easy road to learning. It will demand strenuous effort and continual striving by faith. In short, learning by faith is no task for a lazy man or woman. Someone has said, in effect, that such a process requires the bending of the whole soul, the calling upon the depths of the human mind and linking them with God. The right connection must be formed. Then only knowledge comes by faith. Close.
That is a beautiful quote spoken by a prophet about what kind of effort we have to put in as saints to prepare the coming generation for what lies ahead. Right? I mean, what do we do nowadays? How much time do we actually spend studying the scriptures? How much time do we actually spend praying? How much time do we spend on our knees, our hearts offered up? How much time do we spend watching generic television? How much time do we spend doing things that don't build our faith or strengthen our family ties? What are the things we could do away with? And that's part of the beauty of repentance, is realizing we can do better. You know, repentance isn't always doing away with sin. Sometimes it's just getting away from good to better, from better to best. And I know I don't want to make this a thing about perfection, because we're not supposed to be perfect. That's something we'll talk about when we get to the sermons. But we're supposed to be complete. What are we doing to complete our lives? What are we doing to bend our will to the will of the Lord, to help our families and ourselves build testimonies, build faithful lives? And we do have to put in work, and it is not for the lazy. And see, that's the problem. Not all, but some of these former LDS don't put in the work. There's one person, maybe I'll show their video later. I don't want to pick on low-hanging fruit, but maybe low-hanging fruit's the place to start when you're new at this. But they're like, and they run through a checklist of what a great member they were their whole life, and they've always been faithful and devoted. And then my cousin found out about the CES letter, and I thought, I'm the one to help them through this. And then she's like, and 2 months later, I was done. I knew there was 2 months? You're going to let 2 months of, I can't answer some basic questions, and I really have to wonder what type of work they put in. What type of work do you put in to abandon your faith in 2 months? How devoted and dedicated were you really? I know people that have hung on for years over the same questions. Like that person's gone. But another person will struggle and try. And I think those people will be blessed for it. And so it's tragic that some people don't really want to put in the time. I think, in my opinion, I could be wrong. All right. So let's talk about what he sees in today's students.
Today, the story is much different, as some of your students have already been infected by pornography and worldliness before they ever reach your classes. It was only a generation ago that our young people's access to information about our history, doctrine, and practices was basically limited to materials printed by the church. Few students came in contact with alternative interpretations. Mostly our young people lived a sheltered life. Our curriculum at that time, though well-meaning, did not prepare students for today. A day when students have instant access to virtually everything about the church from every possible point of view. Today, what they see on their mobile devices is likely to be faith-challenging as much as faith-promoting. Many of our young people are more familiar with Google than they are with the gospel, more attuned to the internet than to inspiration, and more involved with Facebook than with faith. In light of these challenges, in the Board of Education recently approved an initiative in seminary called Doctrinal Mastery.
All right. Sorry, overshot the landing there by a few seconds, but you get the idea. The students are hit with things, youth and adults are hit with things today that they weren't hit with 20 years ago because of the ready access to material on the internet. Honestly, when I first started getting serious about church, I never heard a bad thing about it. I mean, I'd heard somebody in the Navy make a few jokes about Satan being God's brother or Jesus' brother. And in my head, I'm like, well, God created them both. This is my know-nothing kind of guy, but not much I knew. I'm like, well, but I didn't argue with him. I didn't go anywhere. I'm just like, okay, whatever. You don't like it? Okay. But you had to hear those things from somebody else, or you had to have somebody give you something to read, a pamphlet or a book or a video to watch. Freaking God makers, right? Today, I open up my YouTube and my first 3 recommendations are from former LDS. Well, 2 of them are former LDS. One is Why I Left the Church. The second one is the change the FSY manual, or the Strength of Youth manual. And the other one was, I don't know if they're a former member or not, but it was things you never knew about the Book of Mormon and what the Mormons won't tell you. Those were the first 3 videos before I got to Greg Mattson on Quick, talking about conservatism and his faith. and before I got to a faithful member, talking about that and Deseret Book, and then after that it was Watcher Palmer, and after that it was a couple CS videos, and then another anti-video. I'm seeing 50, just from right there, 50-50 anti and pro, and I don't go out of my way to watch a lot of anti now. I've got some I'm going to go through because I think they're useful. I think they're helpful to go through and review and let people see what their shortcomings are and see that there's a formula to the anti. But what if I didn't have my testimony and I'm looking up conference talks, and then I start seeing people protesting conference, talking about women in the priesthood, blacks in the priesthood, talking about polygamy, talking about seer stones, or so the internet had, for all of the potential blessings, there's a lot of potential downfall. And so the question comes to, what are we doing to prepare ourselves, right? What are we doing to be ready for the future and for the now? And what are we doing to help others to be ready? And so here's the last comments I'm going to take from Elder Ballard. I'm going to give you a few of my suggestions. He has a long list. He goes for another 30 minutes here. I'm going to cut it short, but here we go.
Influence on our young people. However, the success of doctrinal mastery and of all other programs of study in CES will depend to an important extent upon you. In the face of these challenges, what are your opportunities and responsibilities as CES teachers in the 21st century? Obviously,
Let's try this again, shall we? He just gave he just gave a recommendation. He's speaking to professional CES teachers and instructors, and he's about to give a laundry list of things he can do to prepare to be better teachers. Now, he's speaking to professionals, professional CES and institute teachers, but the things he's going to cite here are principles that we can all apply to make ourselves better teachers in our classrooms, in our homes, and in our personal studies. So, with that said, here's a few of the things that I thought were most important that he covered, and then one or two that are just my own. So, the first one he mentions, and I give a hearty thumbs up to, is learn to love the Lord. When you love the Lord, you will devote yourself to the doctrine of Christ, to keeping your covenants, and seeing everyone around you as a potential child of God that you are asked to bless. You're asked to bless their lives. And that's without a doubt fundamental in the gospel. A true Christian, if he's been blessed, will then seek to give that same blessing to everyone else. And that he will then be doubly blessed, or she, for that great work. That's the basic principle of Christianity. If I have a testimony, I should seek to share that testimony with everyone I encounter and bless them so that their lives can be enriched by gaining a testimony of their own. I will speak things by the Spirit that will touch people's hearts and help them to grow and start a spiritual process of growth for themselves. Secondly, let's see here. Learn to listen. Now, this one, I think this is mine more than his, but I would say learn to listen. Sometimes a question is more than a question. Sometimes it's just a question, I know. Well, what did Joseph Smith say? What are your thoughts on? But sometimes a question can relay information about a greater difficulty or dilemma they're facing. For instance, a question on blacks in the priesthood may address how we view peoples of other races, ethnicities, and religions. And today the kids are being taught to be very socially conscious and socially aware. And when they hear that the church at some point has not liked something, they want to know why. They want to know what that means and why the Lord would let that happen. And that's a chance for a discussion on what it means to have Christ-like charity and love and to practice forgiveness. Because I do hear too many people bashing Brigham. Forgive Brigham. Forgive the early church for not doing enough for the blacks. Learn to forgive. That would help our nation a great deal if we would stop denigrating our founding fathers, right? Something we didn't do until 5 minutes ago. We did not throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's sad, but sometimes a question will belie and give evidence to different issues, and we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of that. 2. Admit to gaps in knowledge, and this is something President Ballard, Elder Ballard, has hit on spot on. Sometimes we get a question and we don't want to admit we don't know. So we may pull from something we heard 20 years ago, something we read in a book that's not true, something that says, I know the answer. You can rely on me. Instead, sometimes the best answer is, I don't know. I learned to say I don't know on the mission. I had no problem saying I don't know. I still have no problem saying I don't know. And that's something we need to humble ourselves and learn to say I don't know. Now the next point ties to I don't know. And when you say I don't know, You then open yourself up to helping them to find the answers they need. Looking up resources, looking up information and material, knowing where to go to find answers, or providing ways for them to find answers on their own. So you don't just say, I don't know, and move on. You say, I don't know, but you know what? And then you open up LDS Library, look up church topics. I'm iffy on those. Some are good, some are and some leave open to other questions. But there are a great deal of sources out there and resources. Like I said, Nibley, Millet. I really love Brother Millet. And people that Adam Miller. There's so many good resources out there, both in the church and some that are out of the church that have learned to view things objectively about the church's history, about our problems with race and polygamy and other. So be willing, when you say, I don't know, be willing to say, but I'll help you. That way they know they're not alone, that they're loved, and that you're going to work with them. And if you don't find an answer, they're going to be more likely to still be able to rely on your testimony until they find an answer. And encourage them not to quit and give them reasons to believe. Give them reasons to believe. And when you come across something you don't know the answer to, talk to a bishop, talk to a stake president, and if they don't know, find someone who can help. And if you can't find someone who can help right away, be patient, give it time, but continue on in your good works and in faithful service. You will be uplifted by the Lord. I know this one for a fact. You will, but you have to be patient and you have to exercise that faith, but you will be blessed. And then my last one. Be worthy of the Spirit. And that kind of ties into the first one, right? Learn to love the Lord. If you have a spirit, when you bear testimony, you will have the Spirit with you. And that can be something that will sustain that student or yourself. If you have a testimony, remind yourself you have a testimony. Remind yourself that you can find answers through prayer, through scripture study, through other sources. But give yourself permission to take time. Be patient. Don't force the Lord onto your timetable. Exercise faith. Practice humility. Bend your knee. Open your heart. And then listen. And then study. And you will find something to give you sustenance in a lean time. Now, there's a list of scriptures because President Ballard thought it useful to give yourself your own type of worthiness interview. Worthiness isn't the right term, but to find out where you stand before the Lord. And I'm going to put these in the description, but they are 2 Nephi 26, 29 to 32, Alma 5, 14 to 30. I remember those from my mission, about having the Lord's countenance engraved. And then the dost thou feel, dost thou do, and then the last one, we should know this if we hold the priesthood, section 121, and the Doctrine and Covenants, verses 33 through 46. Brothers and sisters, there are answers out there. Answers from good people. There are bad answers from good people. There are good answers from good people. There are bad answers from good people. They mean well, but they're bad answers. And there are bad answers from bad people. And in those cases, the bad answers may or may not be on purpose to bring you out and lead you astray. Because they do not care. They just do not want you in this church because they think that as long as... Now, I'm not going to read motives into it, but they want you out. They want you gone. They're disingenuous. But as we go through other videos, if you come on something that you don't understand, reach out, leave a comment, drop an email, talk to a bishop, a stake president, an elders quorum president, a relief society president. Someone has something that can help you. But have faith that you'll find an answer eventually. Don't expect it on a timetable. Brothers and sisters, I hope you like this video. I know that this church is true. I know that the gospel of Jesus Christ is presented in its fullness in the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I do know there's a living prophet, Russell M. Nelson. I know that Joseph Smith is the prophet of the Restoration. I know that there is a great atonement wrought by the Savior, Jesus Christ, that can and will bless all of us for the rest of our lives and into eternity. I know that I love the Lord, and I know many of you are seeking to love him too, if you don't already, or you're seeking for a greater love. That also I'm doing. But I love you. I thank you. I hope you have a good fast Sunday and a good rest of the week. God bless. Peace out.